So I'm from New Zealand, and we have business in New Zealand as well. I have partners in New Zealand, and New Zealand's pretty much back to fairly normal life. And so I'm in touch with a lot of our athletes in New Zealand regularly every week. And there's events on all the time by saying what I want written on my tombstone. So what do I want to leave behind? The first thing is save some people from having their legs amputated. Because I don't know if you know, but Recovery Systems supplies to the medical market. And one of the biggest challenges in Asia is diabetes. And we work with the vascular community and podiatry community to supply what we do to help people revive their lower limbs that are under the threat of being amputated because the lower limbs dying due to the effects of diabetes. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is I wanted to make the life of anyone that's passionate about sport and passionate about whatever sport it is, at whatever level it is, better by helping them to balance their life between doing what they love with their sport, working a day job, and having key relationships in their life like family and so on, by recovering better and recovering faster, because that's a key link to making everything work. Because as a lot of my athletes said to me or say to me, nobody likes it when you fall asleep on date night, and you've got to be present when you're with your family. So that was another key thing. And the third one is because we also make a product for the equine world, for horses, to speed up recovery as well, because horses are athletes with 4 legs. And beyond that, you've got 1 million racing camels in the Middle East. So the other thing I wanted written on my tombstone was made a fortune from camels. So that's my objective in life, is to make a fortune from selling a lot of what we do to the camel racing industry in the Middle East. So as funny as that may sound, it's all doing the same thing to each of those different groups. So my background is more than 5 decades of bike riding at different levels. I spent some time on an Olympic team. I was a good age group triathlete after I came to Singapore, won my share of races, got into trouble, had a bunch of surgery, had my left hip replaced, had to spend 1 year learning how to walk again, spent 3 months on crutches along on that journey, had spinal surgery, wasn't able to run again. And I morphed into coaching, coached for nearly 10 years, mostly multi-sport. So people that had aspirations from doing everything from short races of 2 hours right up to 14, 15 hours, which sounds a little bit like ultra, although you guys in this group on this call, you guys are super nuts. You are super crazy, all of you, for what you're attempting to do. And the question I asked myself the whole time was, what could we do differently? What could we do better in order to recover faster and lock in gains or improvements better and stay in the game longer? So that's a little bit of a background of my my sporting background. Hope that's a good kickoff, Dave. Hope I didn't miss anything out there.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Michael.
By the way, I'm in Singapore, and I've been here 21 years. I've been to lots of different parts of Malaysia. I've been to lots of different parts of Indonesia as well. So, and I've raced a lot, and I'm an age group peer of Dave's, although I'm a little bit older than Dave, just a bit older, a couple of years, and so like a lot of older people that still have because I still train 16 to 20 hours a week, but most of it's on the bike now, between bike and gym for me. So I still have a passion for learning what it is to make it work at my age. And given my ability to improve, my ability to recover, and so on. So I still have that passion to, maintain my fitness at an appropriate level and kind of make the whole thing work. So I've quite a passion for older athletes in that regard as well, knowing that the rules are a little different as you get older, and being able to make it work is pretty important for people with normal goals. This audience has abnormal goals for sure. And
Okay.
that's great. I love that. I love that. I really love what this group is about.
That's fantastic. I think the big takeaway for me from that is your tombstone message of wanting to save legs, because anything that we can do with your help to save our legs as runners on this challenge is obviously going to be very gratefully received. I guess in a way you've answered my second question, Michael, in terms of how you are not only a coach and are passionate about your own personal performance and recovery, but in a way, what brought you into having a business specializing in the recovery of athletes as well. But is there anything else that you can tell us? Because I think it's right that we're up front, that this isn't just about obviously helping us all understand recovery a bit better, but you have a business called Recovery Systems, right?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
In order to do what we do, we needed to understand and to carry on understanding all sorts of recovery modalities and where they fit in and what the appropriate frequency, in other words, how often should you do certain recovery methods in order to make a difference. And so we kind of, and to this day, I continue to biohack. There's a word called biohacking, right? We're continuing to explore new things and new ideas, in order to make a difference. And a lot of these things are marginal gains. They're tiny little increments that add up over time. So for everyone on this call, it's not just about the race month, although that's very important. Your recovery is going to be very important. It's going to be everything leading up to that. And because I imagine that you want to be lifetime runners, it's beyond that as well. And because you want to be in the game long term, you love to do this. That's why you're nuts enough to sign up for this challenge, the Peninsula Challenge. So it's maintaining your sustainability beyond that as well is highly important. Everything leading up, because recovery is a daily dose. Training is a daily dose. Recovery is a daily dose. It's not like you wait for recovery week or a recovery day in which to recover. You actually recover every day. It's called sleep. So we'll get into that a little later on. So recovery, you need to think of recovery as being a daily dose or a daily increment or a daily discipline in order to make this whole equation work.
Okay. I guess that's a good business model for you as well, then, in terms of making it a daily dose as well, because obviously it's bread and butter business in a way. So good for cash flow in a way.
Yeah.
So let's just, before we get into the nitty gritty then about the different methodologies of recovery, and you touched upon obviously the major one there is sleep. How do you personally define recovery then?
Yeah, so if I'm talking to somebody who's got a medical condition, I mentioned diabetes, it could be lymphedema, it could be DVT, it could be a vascular condition. Recovery for a lot of these folks could be as simple as being able to walk again, or as simple as having some form of quality of life. For athletes, it's a different equation. it may be maintaining a training load whilst working a full-time job, whilst maintaining key relationships in a family. Recovery is a key component of that. You can't fall asleep at your desk, or it's not going to last very long if you do. You still need to contribute in each area of your life. So recovery is a key component of that. So different things to different people, but it ends up us functioning at the level that we want to function at, whether that's doing sport for health and wellness, or whether it's doing sport for competitive, or with some real stretch goals as well, like taking on a big event like the Peninsula.
Okay, great. So I agree. It's a really personal thing how you define your level of recovery. But I guess the thing that we have as a group in common is being able to run not again, but again and again and again, and to run a long distance again and again for 31 days. So let's get into the nitty-gritty then, in terms of helping us to get a better understanding of some of the different types of recovery techniques and tools. Maybe you can talk us through those various methodologies from your perspective.
Okay. Would you like me to, at this point, share some slides just to keep us on track, and also as a visual? Why not? As a visual as well. I don't have many. I'm not going to kill you with PowerPoint, everyone. But let me share my screen. Okay,
and while you're doing that, then maybe what you could be doing is giving us some of the principal pros and cons, as you see it, the advantages and disadvantages of each of these techniques as you walk us through them then.
Yep, okay. All right. So I hope that you can see my screen.
I can certainly see it. I hope everyone else can.
All right. Great. Thanks, Junhao. I'm seeing thumbs ups here and there. So the lady in the picture, by the way, is a delightful lady called Pearlie. She calls herself a fitness mummy. So she works full time. She's a mum. She has a passion for fitness. She's lost like 25 kilos of weight. She loves what we do to help her recover faster, because she's, as a mum, as a wife, a mum, as a working professional, and as someone who loves to exercise once or twice a day, it's a key component to what she does. So a little bit of my background while I whiz through. Lots of years biking. I spent a lot of time in Meditech, which was kind of the genesis for what we do at Recovery Systems, and a lot of time competing and coaching in triathlon, and I do a bit of race commentary here and there as well over the years. So I have a few tips here, and we're gonna, most of what we talk about are going to be things that make a difference over time. So the first two things, the two most important things about recovery are sleep and nutrition. Everything else is incremental to that and should influence that. So Junhao, being a fitness professional, and everyone on this call who's been a long-term athlete will know that if you're not eating right, if you're not sleeping properly, you're not going to lock in gains. So here we have an improvement period over time. So this is showing training, because training makes you worse. Training makes you worse. It's only when you recover do you get the super compensation or the improvement. So you need to think of that in doses. And where you're doing something very long-term, like long training runs, going from a marathon distance to 80K has more than double the impact on your body. and it's mostly raiding the nervous system and all the trace elements that are going to delay your healing longer. So we want to look at things that will influence that improvement or that compensation or that recovery, so you can get the super compensation. So nutrition and sleep are key components, and recovery methodologies should influence one or both of those in a kind of a rest and digest format. Some of them will be functional, and we'll talk about some of those differences as we go along. Let me just move my slide on. So we're going to talk about tools, we're going to talk about sleep, we're going to talk about different recovery methods like contrast, compression, the parasympathetic system, what is it, why is it important, and how does it all fit into place. So let's talk about sleep first. So regular sleep's the number one for recovery, because that's where all the rebuilding is done. That's where most of the recovery is going to happen. So I personally believe that being in line with sunrise and sunset is quite important for us as humans. It's the way that we naturally work. Now, it's not always possible. It's not always possible to do because of jobs and family and kids and so on. But looking at not only the quantity of your sleep, but also the quality of your sleep. So here we've got an example of the number of hours. This is pretty generous, 9 hours 28. Deep sleep at 30%, which is a very good number. Light sleep below 55% is really nice. And REM sleep, because deep and REM sleep are doing two different things. REM is predominantly brain health. Deep sleep is predominantly the neuromuscular system. So these are critical numbers, and I think that having a way to measure this, although it's not essential, is pretty good. If you're not a good sleeper, then how do you know if you're making improvements? So having a way to measure this, I think, is very good. In the same way that we wear devices to measure our running, our pace, our heart rate, and all sorts of other biometrics and all sorts of other data. Sleep data is quite important as well. Just as a personal note, I have under my keyboard, I have an earthing mat. Under my floor, under my desk, I have an earthing mat as well. My feet are on that. I am bare feet. Under my bed sheet, I also have an earthing mat. So why do I do that? Because in our lives, in the world we live in, we have a lot of EMF. So I've got a light above me. I've got aircon on up here. I've got a fan on up above. I've got Bluetooth going on. I've got Wi-Fi. There's a whole lot of things that are not natural to us that if you can somehow earth using a simple thing like an earthing mat, I think that can make a difference. Now, for me, that did. So I saw my sleep numbers change, not dramatically, but in a marginal gain sort of way over a period of 1 to 2 months, because it's not about one day, it's not about 1 week. It's things that you can influence over time will make a real difference. So there's a personal example of some biohacking. So more sleep, more muscle growth. So sleep hygiene is quite important. So dark room. So if you can't have a dark room, I personally wear an eye mask. So I black out the light. If you can't block sound, then wear earplugs. So all these little things can make a real difference to your sleep quality as well. So take naps. If you're working from home, or if you have the opportunity to take a nap, then do it. Do it during the day, because that will add to your sleep total and to your sleep quality, and it will help your body to reset, to rest and digest, and to actually get that compensation or the gains out of your training. Dave.
Mike, I'm conscious of sort of time, and this is a deep topic in itself, talking about deep sleep, etc. There's a question that I just wanted to ask myself. How best to measure sleep without bombarding yourself with too much tech?
Yep.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
So if you're not wearing a device or a watch, how do you feel in the morning? You know, do you feel like, you know, you're only halfway done and really you could do with another 4 hours? Because that's a real sign. I'd be looking into I'd be looking into a whole lot of different things, including the
a fair point. And I think, you know, we'll touch upon this later with some of the questions that individuals want answered about sort of, you know, being in tune with our bodies and so forth. I think that's the natural one. But with components like, because you've broken it down here in this slide with REM sleep, light sleep, deep sleep, obviously there's things like Aura rings and Whoop and stuff like that. These are things that personally I shy away from. One, because of budgetary constraints. Two, because of just data overload and trying to keep things simple. Have you come across anything that can provide you with insight into those sorts of elements of sleep in a more simplistic way?
Yeah, so I know that this audience and the Peninsula Run is supported by Chorus. So I'm assuming that Chorus has a sleep function. I'm not too aware of it, but I would be surprised if it didn't have. I personally use just a Huawei watch, and it got to the point where after 3 months my data was so good that I didn't wear it anymore. I didn't need to. And I was then self-monitoring, because I think self-monitoring and having the awareness of your own perceived understanding, your own perception of how you are is the ultimate as athletes. And there's very few athletes that I've ever known that have a real advanced or a real high, I'm going to call it exercise IQ, where they have that real innate understanding without devices of knowing where they're at. There's very few. Most of us need a helping hand here and there. I think as we get better at this, we will uncouple ourselves from devices, because we'll be able to innately measure dose versus recovery. You know, dose being training load versus recovery. Did that equal and match? Am I moving the needle forward? Because these are this is incremental. So I think I'll just do the simple things first. If you don't have a device or a watch, then just measure your readiness to train again. You know, am I ready to go again? If not, then some questions need to be asked around that.
But I think we all will be using watches, and ideally we'll have a Chorus or something like that, where, and a bit like me and computers actually, or software systems, is actually having a better understanding of the functionalities of our equipment actually, and how it can monitor that sort of the degrees and types of sleep that we're having would be a useful tip, right?
So unfortunately, we're human beings, so we're highly complex. So I would say this is an experiment of one. So you need to figure out what works for you, and this is that's been my experience as I've long-term intermittent fasted and done a whole lot of different things in order to figure out how that works for me. Because I think ultimately that's very much an experiment of one. So nutrition and the timing of nutrition is very important, and that's a huge topic. I'm not going to deep dive into it. I'm not an expert. I'm still figuring this out for myself, because there's a whole lot of other factors around this, like gut health, your ability to absorb. You could be eating perfectly, but your ability to absorb, your gut to absorb the nutrients and then assimilate them, and then your, all your processing systems in your body to then make good of them is highly important. I think some people do a better job of this naturally than others. And for many people that I know, this is also that experiment of one category of find out what works. Maybe you're not good with whey protein. Maybe you need to do plant-based. Maybe it needs to be real food, no supplements, and on it goes. So we need to figure this out. And that's
I think the big takeaway here is, and I know this appeals to me, and I'm certain it will appeal to my Malaysian friends and others in Southeast Asia, this concept of rest and digest. Those are the two critical things, big issues, and they are very much personal things. Tell us more about some of the other methods then that might be more common for everybody, so to speak.
Okay, so I've just popped another point up here. Try not to use an alarm clock to wake you. Why? Because, so why do I say that? Because, we've all got to get to jobs. We've all got to squeeze a training session in before we go and work, or maybe have a family commitment and so on. So why am I saying that? So I'm saying not every day. So I have an alarm clock set on some days at a time that I would not like to wake up, but I have to. And so the reason why not to have an alarm clock wake you every day is that your natural highest hormonal levels for growth and repair are highest just before you naturally wake. So let's say that's 6 a.m. If you're waking at 5 a.m., you're actually missing out on the best dose of recovery hormones each day because you've unnaturally woken yourself up. So you're missing that recovery. So just be mindful of that. I know that everyone on this call has a day job, has family, has commitments. So we need to do that on a long day where we've got a long session. We do need to have that alarm, but just be mindful of don't overdo that because you're missing your key natural shot of growth hormone, which happens naturally just before you awake. So important point. So whizzing on. How many days in your training week? This sounds like a silly question, but for me, I have 9 days in my training week. Although I still think I'm 25 years old, so I still try and cram all my training into 5 days. But in actual fact, it takes me longer to recover, even with all the tools and all the tricks. I'm 62 years old. It takes me longer to recover. I'm asking a lot of my body. So don't necessarily think of a training week being 7 days. If you've had a big load and you're just coming off a big training block, maybe your training week's 9 days, maybe it's 10. And having those extra days to recover are all part of the balancing act of making this work and making this sustainable. And don't also take into account that life stress is body stress. So you may be totally on top of your training and that's going really well, but you've got issues at work or whatever. That stress will actually add to your stress load. And so you do need to be kind to yourself and consider that as a key factor as well. And that not just your training load, it's all that life stress as well. It could be the traffic in KL. At 2 o'clock on a Friday. I've been stuck in that traffic. Okay, so so you do need to consider that. All right, so let's. I want to talk about tools just briefly, Dave. I think you've got a question for me as a cue to this. So I'll let you ask about different modalities.
Well, I mean, if you can just get on to explain some of the the tools and techniques that are out there, whether it be compression socks, the things that are common for everybody. I think you've made a really great point about how individual recovery is through the sleep, the rest and digest sort of topics. But there's a lot of stuff that's out there, whether it be simple compression socks to other forms of treatments, massage, etc., that are aiding recovery, that are common for us all. What's your thoughts about those, and what's the pros and cons of them from your perspective?
So I'll categorize 3 in one area. So hands-on massage, massage guns or percussion guns, and foam rolling. So I'll put these in one category as a broad category. So these modalities are about lengthening muscles out and breaking down scar tissue. So because we're in a repetitive sport, running's very repetitive, and your muscle patterns are repetitive, therefore muscles will shorten and you'll have overuse points as a result of that. So hands-on massage, physical sports massage, percussion guns, and foam rolling, their role is to break down scar tissue and help the muscles to return to their normal length so that they can behave normally. And because if this goes on long term, then you can have blockages. Blockages can then lead to injuries or result in overuse because the muscle's not functioning properly and there are imbalances that occur. So the good news is I personally think that a good sports masseuse is highly valuable and worth their weight in gold. And it's going to be that thing you do once or twice a month. So frequency is appropriate. You're not going to do it once or twice a day. In actual fact, doing it once or twice a month, and the same with percussion guns, which may be a little more frequent. Foam rolling might be once or twice a week. Percussion guns might be once or twice a week. They're doing a similar function. However, you're going to be worse before you're better. So what do I mean by that? Breaking down scar tissue, having a proper sports massage is going to create trauma in your body because they're breaking down scar tissue, and you're probably going to be worse before you're better. So I used to prescribe this during a recovery week for my athletes, knowing that they had nothing key planned. You would never do it before a key event. You would always, there's an appropriate time in order to do this. So you're going to take a step back in order to move 2 steps forward to restore the muscles. So you need to realize that. Similar with percussion technology, I personally use percussion technology. I have a product called, it's a Terragun. The Terragun people here in Singapore approached us because they wanted to resell our product, and we essentially did a product swap. And so I got to learn about that modality. So that's a once or twice a week thing for me. And the same with foam rolling, probably once or twice a week. So that's about lengthening the muscles out. And there is an appropriate frequency, maybe once or twice a week, maybe once or twice a month. The other thing that comes up quite often is ice. So ice is a real mystical thing. Now, we have a contract with World Rugby. We supplied Rugby World Cup. We also have a contract with New Zealand Rugby. We have a contract with Singapore Rugby as well. These are collision sports. So to sum up ice, you use ice for trauma. So you use ice to control bruising, internal bleeding caused by, say, a twisted ankle, twisted knee, hamstring strain. Use ice to control bleeding and also as a form of pain relief. However, ice is not appropriate to use daily because it delays healing, because the first phase of healing is inflammation. Now, in a trauma situation, we want to control that, but in normal day-to-day recovery, we want to deal with the inflammation not by icing it, but by treating it appropriately. So ice for trauma. Contrast therapy. So what about hot and cold? So I think hot and cold therapy is really good. So going from, say, a plunge pool to a spa pool, or maybe a plunge pool. And when I say plunge pool, I mean something that's about 8 degrees Celsius. And for maybe 1 to 2 minutes, and then into a spa pool. So this is restricting and then expanding. So this is actually good for recovery in that it allows the body to release waste products. It also is good for autophagy. So autophagy is where our body actually releases dead cells in order to make room for new growth and repair. It's particularly important for older athletes, I believe, even more so than younger athletes, because we do tend to have a bit more baggage when it comes to dead cells. So autophagy is important. I personally do hot and cold therapy once or twice a month. So it's not something that's convenient to do every day, because I've got to go to a special place to do it. There's, I've got to set aside 2-3 hours. It's not highly convenient. I do benefit from it when I do it, but it's not highly convenient.
Michael, if I can just come in there and talk about sort of the contrasting therapies there,
Yep.
but specifically your comments about ice.
Yes.
Xiao Kong's just reminded me actually that one of the thoughts that we had of helping athletes was to provide ice baths at the end of each day.
Yep. I think it's a good idea.
You do?
Yep.
Even though you think it's only sort of used previously, you were mentioning ice for trauma delays recovery.
Yep. So you're going to be, the reason why I think it's a good idea is you're going to be dealing with heat. So you're going to have to get everyone's core body temperature down. And right. So when we're doing sevens tournaments, rugby sevens tournaments here, the players will go and jump in the ice bins, then they'll come over to our tent and do the compression. So totally appropriate, because you want to bring your core temperature down. And so core temperature is controlled through your head, through your armpits, through your groin, and around the heart. And I think it's really important to have that reset. And it may only be for one or 2 minutes, but it's really important. I think given the load that you guys are going to be under, I think it's a really good idea to do it. And you're not going to sit in there for half an hour, but okay. And you probably won't want to. But I really do think so. That may not sound like I've contradicted myself, but I really haven't. That treatment is really about bringing your core temperature down, and then you're going to be a whole lot more receptive to your nutrition, and then to your next phase of recovery. That's a really good point. Thanks for reminding me of that, Dave.
Great. Thanks for clarifying too. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, great. It's a really good question. So that's ice. So compression socks. I'll pull up a slide just to give you an idea. So we work with the vascular community, like vascular surgeons and so on. So let me take a look at a compression sock. At the ankle, it's around 20 mmHg of pressure. It's a reasonable amount, but it's a limited amount of pressure. At the calf, it's around 6 mmHg of pressure. The compression sock will only work when you're moving, because to work effectively, you need a milking action. And the milking action, the squeeze and release action, will only happen when you're moving. So it's the calf muscle contracting, creating a squeeze, and moving the blood volume up. So that's how it works. So for someone who's got a medical condition, for example, that's static, this is not doing anything. Or in the words of the head vascular surgeon at Changi General Hospital, not far from where I live, You're not going to get any worse, but you're not going to get much better either. I think in the sports world, compression socks do have somewhat a placebo effect. And if you think they work, please carry on using them, because that's important. Our mind's in the game, right? And if you are moving, there is a pumping action going on, albeit it's a fairly small pumping action. I'll give you a comparison. So with our category of treatment, which is intermittent, pneumatic intermittent compression, the pressure level's about 10 times that, and it's constantly moving from the foot upwards. So it's moving the bad stuff out, bringing the good stuff back. So I think it's a personal choice. If you think they work, use them. That from a recovery point of view, where you're static, in my view, they have a limited effectiveness because you're not moving and they're not doing what they need to do, which is pump. If you are moving,
okay, so
yeah.
So this is very interesting, because I remember actually people laughing at me for running in compression socks once. Okay, and that when I, as a complete newbie to this whole game of exercise, really, 10 or 12 years ago, from my fat little banker days, I was told you only put compression socks on after you finish doing exercise, post-exercise.
Yeah.
They're for recovery, not for performance. But what you're actually saying there is that compression socks, albeit to a smaller extent than other methodologies,
yeah,
there is actually this squeeze and release from movement, and actually putting compression socks on for recovery and then putting your feet up and doing nothing actually doesn't have much benefit.
That's quite correct. Yeah. So that's validated by all the medical professionals that we work with as well, who are treating conditions as well. I can't wait to see Simon Cross next time, actually, and tell him he's talking BS. Thanks, Mike. So maybe he was envious, Dave. So I want to move on a little bit to what we do, and to cover the 4 areas that we influence athletic performance, and not just recovery. So warm-up, recovery, rehab, and travel. So travel sounds like a very romantic notion at this stage, as we all dream of traveling to races again. But let's cover each of these off. So 10 minutes on the boots is worth around 30 to 40 minutes of running. So that's measured by muscle oxygen, or SMO is the term. In 8 minutes, in fact, the SMO is up above what it would normally take 30 to 40 minutes to get to. This is because of the pressure, that 240 mmHg of pressure. So this is a very low cost from a metabolic point of view of getting yourself ready for your session. Because we know that not everyone has 30 or 40 minutes to warm up. And in the case of Chun Hao, let me tell you a story just briefly, Chun Hao, of because you're a trainer, a lot of the trainers that we work with say to me that all their clients turn up late, and then they're into their PT session without a warm-up, and they're not going to get the value, and they're not going to be able to hit the high notes of the session because of that. So the trainers that we're working with are, as a protocol, are having their clients get on the boots when they arrive, even for 8 minutes, and then they're into the session. They still need to do the joint mobility, because this isn't going to do joint mobility, but their vascular system is primed and ready to go in a way that's going to allow them to hit the high notes of the session and really push into that zone where they're creating the change, where they're getting the right sort of benefit out of the session. So that's warm up. So highly important. So how I would see this panning out for pretty much everyone is first thing in the day, before you start your day, even if you're not training, 10 minutes on the boots while you're having your cup of coffee, your cup of teh tarik, your cup of green tea, whatever it is that gets you started. And that 10 minutes is going to be key to setting you up for the day. You can do longer, by the way. So that is your warm-up. And secondly, recovery. So interestingly enough, the lady in the picture here is Natalie Dow. Her Instagram tag is Rockstar Arms. Good old Natalie just ran 100K today. Not last week, today. Yeah, so she's crazy, just like you guys, complete nuts. And she's a bigger lady. Now, let me tell you, she's about 174 tall. She's not a small lady. She's not petite. So she's asking a lot of her body, because we all know it comes down to gravity when it comes to running, right? And I've looked at all your pictures, by the way, and I can see you're all good builds for runners. Not like me. I'm a big unit. You know, no wonder I got myself into trouble with my hip and my back. But, you know, Natalie's a big lady. So we're a real critical part of her recovery. And this is that whole marginal gains process. Now, I know that she didn't wake up 1 week ago and decide she's going to run 100K. She was working away at this for at least 6 months off a good base. She already had a good running base, and this was something that she really she respected the training that she needed to do, and she respected the recovery that she needed to do as well. So that's a really important aspect. So she knows that this is a daily process. Now, when Natalie got this is our battery version. You can see it's not plugged into anything. This battery lasts 4 hours. When she first got this, she had all sorts of fights in her family because everyone wanted to use it at the same time. So we actually have a duo system. This is the first in the world. This machine here can be shared by 2 people. So her and her husband, she's on the legs here, but her favorite cuff is pants. So the pants come right up to her chest. And so 2 people can use that at the same time. So that was quite important. So the reason why we did that is that we work a lot with families, teams, and clubs. So that was an important thing for us to think of. And remember, I'm a coach as well. I think about how people are going to use it. Well, I do my best to anyway. And so that was an important aspect. Okay, trauma. So I mentioned ice earlier, and ice is appropriate for a trauma. So you can actually use the boots by putting an ice pack inside the cuff. So then you zip it up. So let's say it's a knee, for example. So putting an ice, like a gel pack around your knee, and then zipping it up, and then having the pressure down nice and low. So then you've got the magic of ice compression therapy. Remember the old first aid mantra of RICE: rest, ice, compression, elevation. So this is really bringing that to bear in one device and having this as a utility if you do get into trouble and you do need to get some ice on something that's giving you some trauma. So that's a real important aspect. Now, by the way, speaking of trauma, because you guys are going to be running for 31 days, I bet that your feet are going to get really sore. So I asked Dave to plant this question, but I'll bring this up now. Our cuffs have 6 zones in them. So this is zone 1 here, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, 5, 6. So zone 1, you can control down here. You can actually turn it off. So you can still get the benefit of the compression, but maybe at some stage in that long month, your feet are going to be quite sore, and maybe you're nursing a blister or some lacerations that you really don't want to aggravate by having too much pressure around, so you can turn that off. So I think that's also important to understand that that's a capability of what we do as well. Just considering that we want to treat as much as possible, but sometimes we want to leave something well alone to allow it to recover better. Travel. So we all remember the romance of travel. You guys are a bit lucky in that you can travel within Malaysia. My weekly travel around Singapore, my long ride on a Saturday is around the island. And I wave at Malaysia as I get to the edge there. I can see Malaysia. Hello, Malaysia over there. Hello, Indonesia. But I'm not getting out of Singapore anytime soon. So we all dream of the day that we can, and that we can get to key races around different parts of the world. So we work with a lot of athletes that are training for key events, and maybe they've spent 6, 9, even 12 months training for an event. Let's say it's Ironman and Kona, or let's say it's UTMB. You've spent a long time training for that, only to then get on an airplane, and the moment the cabin door closes, the air pressure in the cabin drops, the SPO, the oxygen level drops from 98 or 99% down to 94. Have you ever noticed how people fall asleep when the cabin door closes? That's because the oxygen level has dropped. Now your body is producing swelling or edema over time. So now you're going to arrive at your destination at a time where you need to be at your best because you've done everything you can to prepare. You're going to be fighting the effects of the long haul flight, including the swelling, because of that fact. So being able to use the boots on a plane is very important to make sure you arrive in great shape and ready to go for your race. So that's the aspect of travel and how to use this for travel. So on the medical side, by the way, we have people using the boots for DVT prevention, just so you know. And yes, you can carry it on board. In fact, our battery model, you do need to carry it on board anyway because it has a battery in it, and it's quite commonly used in long-haul flights. Okay.
Right, just on that point of falling asleep when the cabin door closes.
Yeah.
I can relate to that very much, but I can also relate to the fact that actually on the times that I've used the recovery systems tool myself, courtesy of some friends that have already become clients with you, and Jerry's one of those.
Yeah.
I found that it was very good for me falling asleep as well.
Yeah.
What's your view about that? Is there a reason? Are the two linked or what?
Yeah, there are, and that was going to be one of my slides as well. So remember, we talked right at the beginning that sleep and nutrition are the gold standard, the foundation for recovery. So anything that influences sleep and nutrition or rest and digest is highly important. So as Dave pointed out, most of the athletes that use our product fall asleep, and most report that their sleep quality is improved. And this is the reason why, is that it's triggering the parasympathetic healing system, which is your rest and digest healing system, or your nervous system, because muscle soreness is not the muscle, it's actually your nervous system that is trying to cope. And there's nothing more stressful. There's no sport more stressful than running on the body and on the nervous system, pretty much. We could probably name a few here and there, but and you folks that are going really long with your training and long with your events, there is a real overload on the nervous system. So that rest and digest component of what we do, of putting the body into healing through that rest and digest process, or that parasympathetic healing, is critical, because when that happens, your body's starting to release growth hormones, repair hormones. You're starting to reset the system to get ready for the next day. In the case of your 31-day scenario, for the ready for the next day, or in normal scenarios, ready for the next day's training, or ready for the next day's whatever the load, whatever the stress is on your body. So this is universally apparent. Now, this is something that you won't get from, say, a percussion gun. No one's ever fallen asleep with a percussion gun. If you have a look through our social media at events that we've been at, where regardless of whether it's a Spartan race perhaps, or an Ironman event, where we've been running a recovery tent, you've got people coming in, finishing, and they're dying. They're really keen to talk to their friends about how the race was and so on. After they put the boots on, 5 minutes later, they're out. They cannot communicate anymore. They're asleep. This is the body resetting. So
okay, got it.
Yeah. So if you, thanks. That's a brilliant question. I think we covered that really well. So, which is a real cue to when is the best time of day. If I can only use it one time a day because I'm time poor, when should that be? And the answer is before bed, because it's going to highly likely to influence your sleep quality. If you do have the luxury of being able to use it during the day because you work from home, or you can take it to work, you can take some time out at the gym, tune how in a quiet place, then it has the real ability to generate a power nap as well. You know, I mentioned earlier that warm up at the start of the day is another great time to use this. So potentially you could be 2 to 3 times a day and really getting the benefit. So it's not a once a week thing, because recovery is not a once a week thing. Recovery is a daily dose. Training's a daily dose. And you know what they say about doses, right? If your dose is too high, then it becomes poison. Just like medicine, right? If you take too much, it becomes poison. If you underdo the recovery dose, that also becomes poison. So that's quite an important aspect. So thanks for bringing that up. And so universally, I presented to 3 doctors a while ago, and 5 minutes into the presentation, I had to stop because they were all asleep, because we put the boots on them to start the presentation. We had to wait for them to wake up. So case closed. It's triggering your body's healing response through the parasympathetic system. To the best of my knowledge, there's very few things out there that do this.
Certainly massaging and foam rollers, whenever I use those, there's no chance of me sleeping, that's for sure.
So I call my sports masseuse the submission masseuse, because it's like some sort of MMA where I feel like tapping out. For the most part, this is a really good modality for creating a high, and there's no tissue damage. So you guys, day in, day out, you're getting tissue damage from running. It's one of the hardest things you can do. And now
I've got a few other questions, Mike. Sorry, and I'm conscious of timings for people, particularly at your end of the world. I've got plenty of time this afternoon, but of course, it's approaching people's sleep time. Before I get into some of the questions that we've got and throw the floor open to others who may have some other questions, can you just give us a little bit of an insight in terms of who are some of the athletes that are using recovery systems, intermittent pneumatic compression, IPC, and what sort of tools might you recommend of yours to our runners at the moment?
Yeah, cool. So here's some Malaysians.
Yeah.
How about these guys? So Aldrian is our agent for demo. So you want to try our product? Aldrian's the guy to connect with.
And he's KL based, right?
He's KL based, and Aldrian's in the national team. So is Irene for triathlon. So is Irene, and so is Zeke. Here is. Does anyone remember this? So name the athlete.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, name the athlete in this picture.
Well, that's Jerry.
Yeah, that's Jerry. You can tell because of the fingernails, right?
Well, and also in fairness to Wu Kit, he was in Coast to Coast as well.
Yeah. I popped him in there because of that. And there's tons of others, by the way. And they're runners, triathletes, cyclists, Spartan racers, and so on. We've got a lot of Malaysia customers. The reality is we can ship to Malaysia in less than 24 hours. So
does that apply for Indonesia as well?
Indonesia is 1 to 2 days for Indonesia. And Indonesia, we do this because of the customs. But so far, so good with Malaysia. It's been straight through, and nobody's paid any funny duties so far.
Okay. So before we get into Q&As, I just want to sort of, I originally pulled you out of my contact list, having sort of obviously met with you at various races over the years, the 10 or so years that we've known each other, because I thought that your tools would be great for the challenge that we're going to do. And I understand and respect the fact that you are not sort of sponsoring athletes. All of those athletes that you've mentioned have all bought those tools out of their own funds. Yeah. And in fact, when you mention Rugby World Cup and working with the Rugby Association of Singapore and of New Zealand and other sports clubs that you work with, you, because of the costs and the belief that you have in your product, you don't provide these things for free. Yeah. Is there or not? So therefore, you're not going to sponsor us and give us one of your or two of your machines so that we can use. Sadly, is there an offer that you'd like to tell us about today that you could extend to our Tour of Peninsula runners? Yeah, there is. So just to further illustrate your point, there's 3 Olympic gold medalists here. One's Joseph Schooling, who you may know in Malaysia. He's very famous in Singapore. The second gold medalist from Singapore is Paralympian Nur Alam, who's also ranked 10th in the world in the able-bodied, by the way, for archery. So she's an exceptional athlete in whatever tournament she turns up to. Adam Hall, double motocross world champ, Courtney Duncan, vertical marathon, Susie Walsham. They're all these people from different sports. None of them are sponsored. All Black and professional rugby player Lima Sapawanga. These are all pro athletes, and with triathletes, stand-up paddleboarding, multi-cross, velodrome, and so on. So the way we work is our athletes can, if they want. Mike's just joining us, Mike Lim. Our athletes can join our ambassador program. So this is where we give them a unique code to post with their posts. We can give them ready to post materials on what we do, how it works. We do interview them. So I recently did an interview with Aldrian about training and recovery relative to him. It's not a big promotional thing for us. We're not talking about recovery system. We're featuring him as an athlete and his life as a coach, and we're doing a feature on him. In the same respect, we can do that with anyone on this call that wants to come into that program. I don't know if you recognize this lady. It's Colleen Augustin. She's a MMA fighter. She's KL based. So a lot of these guys,
have come into that program, and by telling Irene and Zeke post about us every week. We don't ask them to. They do because they're using the product every day, more or less. And whenever they're on, they're posting the story about, I've just done 15K run, and I'm happy to be on my boots now and multitasking, doing homework or doing work, answering emails or whatever on a Zoom call. And so it becomes a natural part of their recovery. I think for this audience, and let me get to an offer for you guys, Dave. And so there's three products that I'd like you guys to consider that we've created a Malaysian ringgit price, which is delivered to you or delivered to Indonesia as well, without any delivery charge. So the first one is our Black Max 2. So this is what Irene and Zeke are using. This one is mains powered, so you plug it into the wall. It's the same. All these three products are the same pressure. This one is legs only. And this product's been around for about 4 years now. The second product, the Quattro, we're about to release, is a battery version. And this has 2-hour battery life. It has 4 chambers in the legs, and it's available in legs or arms. And then the third one that you might want to consider is our Pro model, which is 6 chambers, which has 4-hour battery and 4 recovery modes. And also this one, you can put 2 people on one machine, and it has other cuffs like hip and glute cuff, pants cuff, and so on. So and arms. So a lot more utility value about that.
So, sorry, just on that one where you can put 2 people, this duo, this world first that you mentioned.
Yes.
Yep. Presumably you have to buy an extra pair of the
yep.
of the legs or whatever you refer to them as. Yeah.
Yeah. The price that you can see here is with the legs. And by the way, that's where everyone should start, because the furthest most point is the best place to start from a treatment point of view. So you wouldn't start with the hip and glute cuff, for example. You do need to work from the feet back in order for this to be effective, because essentially it's pushing the blood volume through your lymphatic system, which is your kidneys and liver. That's where the bad stuff's being extracted, all the metabolic waste. And then when it releases, because it squeezes a minute, then it releases for around 20 seconds. When it releases, then the fresh nutrients are coming back to speed up the healing, the recovery, and ultimately what we're looking for is the gains. Or
just for the benefit of 2 of our participants who, I made this mistake and you won't know it either. We actually have a husband and wife team running.
Oh, yeah.
So the duo would be perfect, wouldn't it? Yep. How much is the extra set of leggings?
It's around about 1,300 ringgit, roughly.
Okay. Just so as Alan knows, it's important for him.
Yeah. So what we'll do now, there is a connector that we will give for free for anyone who's running or anyone who's connected to the Peninsula race. That's normally around $900. But we want to encourage you guys to get into this. That's why we'll come up with this. But also there's the ability to make money by influencing through your social media. Anyone that uses your discount code that buys from us, we will compensate you. So it's all recorded electronically. We've got a dashboard that you can log into and see how many leads. For example, these two, one of these gals here, the stand-up paddleboarders, has 60,000 ringgit worth of leads.
Wow. Okay.
from her social media.
Right.
And we're helping her to convert those by doing demo days and the like. So it is something that's working really well, and we think it's equitable. It's a win-win because we're helping each other. We've helped audiences by doing talks to their audience. So Chun Hao, for example, to your clientele in the gym, for example, or any running groups that you're connected with, we can do a talk and help you to generate, business for yourself and for us through that as well. When the borders open up, I would also definitely be on a plane up to your way in order to run clinics and talks as well, and to bring gear up in order to do that.
Okay, that's good to know. And I think, I mean, as I explained to you, and why I feel, one of the reasons why I feel this is valuable time invested, is that all of the runners are expensing this incredible challenge sort of through their own self-sufficient resources.
Yeah.
And this could be as well as the cause that we're collectively supporting, this could be a great way for them to raise some additional funds to help with those expenses and contribute to our cause. So that's just food for thought there. To wrap things up, I have a couple of questions that are still outstanding, and there may be some others from everybody else in the audience. So either put them in the chat or unmute yourselves and chip in. But one of the questions that I want to ask you is about supplementation. Actually, around the topic of supplementing. In a way, all of these tools and techniques and modularities, as you refer to them as, are supplementing that rest and digest sort of lifestyle that we need to have to recover properly. What other supplements do you think might be useful for a challenge like the Tour of Peninsula?
Yep. So, that's a great question. So trace element replacement is going to be really important, both, I think, even preloading and during. So now I've not run an ultra, but I've done 100 triathlons, and I've been on a 20 to 24 hour training week when I was competing. So I know that through sweating, you leach a lot of trace elements, and these can mess with you. And they can also be aggravated by diet, by food. For example, I tend to avoid MSG because it has a massive dehydrating effect. And also for me, it's a hallucinogenic. It really affects me in strange ways. I start to see, spiders and all sorts of things. So, some of my supplements are the magnesium optimizer, something like that. This is daily, and I'm not on a huge training load. And remember, you guys are asking a lot of yourself, so I think you need to be covering the bases with magnesium, potassium, and a whole bunch of other trace elements, maybe even omega-3. I've got fish oil here. Here's a good one from my grandmother, Epsom salts. So this
Epsom salts, not Epsom salts, please.
Epsom salts. Sorry for my accent, my Kiwi accent. So in a bucket of water, it absorbs through the skin. And I think that could be that may even be, if you're going to do that plunge pool, maybe you've got some Epsom salts in there. I don't know. I haven't researched whether that's a good idea, but throw it in there. And because
Epsom is just up the road from me, Xiao Kong, so I'll bring a sack load back with me.
Yeah, I think when we ran the Trans Peninsula, I don't know if you know Arcel, Lim Arcel. So he recommended Epsom salt as well.
Yeah.
So we put it in the bucket of water, and then we dip our feet in there for a while.
Yeah.
You know, every day. Yeah.
It's great. Even if it can be up to your, up to your calf muscles as well. The more surface area, the better.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Feet
Because,
and calf muscle. Yeah.
Malaysia is hot. It's hot. It's hotter than Singapore.
I think Singapore is even hotter.
Oh no, I've suffered in Malaysia in races. Just suffered. So I would say really.
Yeah, that's good reminder. Yeah, the Epsom salt. Yeah,
absolutely.
And it's easily available. Yeah, you can buy them in many pharmacies. Huh?
Yeah. So unfortunately, once you're behind on trace elements, you're in trouble for a while. It's not like you can top up in a day and you're back to normal. These things take a while to absorb into the body. So I'd even be doing a bit of a preload, even before, and make sure you're on top of things through your training blocks as well, and you're not getting depleted in your training blocks. It'll manifest itself because you'll have difficulty. You'll have restless legs. When you're trying to sleep and your legs just don't want to stay still. Yeah. So it'll manifest itself in that sort of behavior. So that's a nervous system. That's because of depletion. The boots will help, but they're not going to overcome a depletion like that. So you really need to top up. And I'm not an expert. Please, you guys have done way more running than I will ever do. So I'm not an expert, but that's something that, as my duty of care as a coach, particularly where we were swimming in the evenings here in Singapore in hot pools that were like 25, 26 degrees because they're not covered. They're open pools, swimming pools. Everyone would sweat far more than they thought they did. They'd be maybe 1 to 2 kilos, and then they couldn't sleep that night. And it starts to become a vicious circle of no recovery as a result of that. That's a good question, Dave.
Okay. Well, actually, it wasn't mine. It was from the group. So,
and look, most of this should be covered in your food, by the way, because before we reach for supplements, we should be asking to get it from food. But your gut's going to be under stress as well with everything that's going on, and with all the maybe with all the gels and so on that you may be taking, you may have a bit of gut stress. So ultimately, food should be the first choice in my view, and then supplements are your backup.
Yeah. One other last question, if I might, before I throw it open to the floor to see if there's anything else out there that needs to be answered at this stage. But this is also from the group. It involves the compulsive mindset that I know that we can all suffer from, but and the compulsive mindset of chasing numbers whilst we're either training or participating in a particular event. What advice would you give to overcome that from a recovery perspective, Mike?
Remember why you're doing this in the first place. It's for health and wellness, ultimately. And, and you're taking on a pretty chunky goal. This is ambitious, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the core of this, because my reference point for saying this is that I've been a lifetime overtrainer. And it cost me. It cost me $60,000 in surgery, amongst other things. And it cost me from a recovery and so on and so forth. So I used to watch out for this behavior with my athletes because, they were my duty of care in order to keep them on the healthy side of competition. So I think the question it comes back to is remember why you do this. It's to add value to your life, not to make you miserable. And data is great. I chase numbers daily on my bike. I'm not trying to break records every day, but I'm trending nicely when I put the effort in the right way. And I think that's really good. We're goal-centric as human beings. At the end of the day, I treat a good day's training as a tick. you don't get 10 ticks, you get 1 tick. And then I know I need to recover appropriately in order for those gains to materialize. No matter how good your data is, unless you recover properly, it's not going to materialize into what you need it to be. And that's and that's gain. So just keep it real, have a sense of humor. And last time I checked, I'm not getting paid to compete. I never made much money from competition, and nor do a lot of my professional athletes either. And so just have a real sense of fun and carry on playing. Have a sense of playing with it. Play with the numbers, but it is play. It's not. Don't let it become a form of torture.
No, totally endorse that. Wise words indeed. First of all, thanks everybody for being with us still. You've not lost anybody, Mike. They're all still here, I think, these participants.
I really appreciate
so thanks for that, everybody. Is there anything else that you want to ask Mike before we sort of wrap up?
So couple of ways you can connect with us. So I've got Recovery Systems written on my hat. Our Instagram is Recovery Systems. I personally answer all the messages. We do have a monthly giveaway. You need to follow us and sign up for our newsletter. There's a little plug because we want to connect with you. Check on our blogs. We've got what I think is a really good blog on the parasympathetic system. We've got a really good blog on compression, on intermittent compression for performance and various aspects of intermittent compression. And we're just finalizing a blog in the next 1 to 2, probably about a week or so, on recovery for ultra running. No surprises, pretty much going to be everything that we discussed. So you guys, there's
a few people in this audience that you could maybe sort of consult with as well, Mike. You never
Absolutely.
know.
And look,
sorry, just to cut you off in your prime there. You're answering my last question, which was how we stay in contact and all the rest of it. I just want to check with all the runners here. Any other questions for Mike about questions relating to recovery techniques before we sort of wrap up? Okay. Based on the silence being the stern reply, so to speak, I'll assume that we've got all the bases so far covered. Thanks again for all of you participating. It is late in the evening. Mike has mentioned how you can make contact with him. If you have other questions that come up during the throes of the next few weeks and ongoing months around recovery, I think Mike will be a great reference point for us and source of information to add some tips and techniques to what we're developing ourselves individually around this rest and digest. I'm going to take the liberty of summarizing some of these bullet points in some key takeaways, just to sort of remind us all of some of the nuggets that Mike shared with us. Mike, anything else that you'd like to add in closing?
So anyone in KL that wants to try, then Eldrian will be your guy. You can reach out to Eldrian on Instagram. And
I've got his contact points as well. Don't worry. So I can circulate those to the group.
So I think it's important for you guys.
Adrian is our business partner too. We organize a race together.
Oh, brilliant!
In Port Dickson.
He's a nice guy.
2 years ago or more. In 2019.
Nice guy. I really is.
So we are in constant contact with him too.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
That's great. And I did mention our Quattro product is due for release, which is the 4-chamber battery, is due for release this hopefully end of this month. So everything else we have in stock now, as and when people are ready. So I think not only is the event and managing your recovery during the event itself, very important. But it's not a one and done. You guys are leading up to that, and then hopefully you're going to have a running life beyond the peninsula. So think about sustainability, and with all the methods that we mentioned, it's what's repeatable and convenient will make a difference. It's what you're able to do conveniently and repeat will make a difference. So I mentioned things like contrast therapy, hot and cold treatment. It's nice to do, but it's not convenient. I mentioned a bunch of other things that are also not that convenient to do as well. So it's what you can put on in less than a minute and carry with you, take with you, and repeat will make a difference. So I don't know about the logistics of the event itself, but I imagine being able to take a break and spend some time in a car or in a van and lie down in the middle of nowhere and have something operating off battery power could be really beneficial to you as well, being able to take that break. Because remember, there's no tissue damage. You're not going to actually be wrecked by using it, like a percussion gun or perhaps hands-on massage. You'll get tissue damage from. You've already got tissue damage. You need to be really gentle, and this should hopefully help.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks. Again, on behalf of us all, Mike, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Xiao Kong, anything as a closing sort of comment that you wanted to add or anything?
Closing is more personal. I actually bought this Black Max from Jerry. So I have that, but I left it in KL.
Oh, yeah.
So this is really a good reminder on my next trip. Yeah. Once we can cross in the strait, I will pick it up and make sure that it's convenient. Yeah, it's reputable. I can use it every day.
By the way, that was our Generation 1 product.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's an old. So should I? So should I upgrade? Mike?
Time out. You can take that one offline, Michael. Okay.
Well, right? I think it's a testament to it. It's still going after 5 years.
But really, just to sum it up, it's a good reminder. Some of the things we know, what we don't get to put them into practice on a daily, consistent basis. So it's a good reminder. For example, the Epsom salt, I have that somewhere as well, So other things, yeah. So I think like sleep, how important is sleep, and sometimes you just don't do that, consistently enough, So we need to build that.
Talking of which, that's a great link.
Yes.
A great segue to the fact that we're now going to close this. Thanks again, everybody. So, my closing remark, however, is, Michael, there is no hopefully about all of these runners being able to run after the Tour Peninsula. So I will see to it personally that they will not kill themselves on this journey.
That's good.
Yep. Okay.
All right. So I'll get you the link to the recording, Dave.
Legion. Yeah, that would be much appreciated.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. And we'll be in touch. And take care, everybody.
So go and get your sleep now, Mike.
Get to bed.
Go to bed. Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.